So welcome everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending where you are. This is César Trabanco from the Global Chamber, VP of Business Services. I think you all know me, but I welcome you today. The idea of this event is to foster those relationships you have to the Global Chamber, to find ways to better realize the introductions and the activities. It's not only the warm introductions, but also the events and the activities that are happening around the year, the whole year. So I would like to start. We have a keynote speaker, a guest. It's David Plunkett from the Global Chamber London, and he will be covering amazing stuff later in the event. So if you need to go, make sure you get the recording because Dave is amazing. We're going to start with Doug Bruhnke, our CEO, and Doug is going to be giving us 5 minutes, more or less, type of summary of the mission and vision of the Global Chamber, and how of the idea on how he wanted to connect the world. So Doug, thanks for joining us today and for the very last minute to speak for these 5 minutes. But I think it's going to be adding a lot to what we're trying to achieve today.
Oh, my pleasure. And it's actually going to be a little bit more framed around the topic, which is, connecting strategically to grow your business, or at least that's my understanding of what we're really talking about today. So I thought I would provide kind of some context of what we tried to do, what we're actually doing, and why we're doing it, and how it all comes together. And then César is going to be talking about, as you're joining Global Chamber, how to onboard, and then Dave's going to bring it all together with some really great thoughts around how to connect effectively, and you find business referrals and to actually leverage those business referrals. So I really thank you, César, for pulling this together, because it allowed me to think about those early days before Global Chamber, and there were a couple things I kind of forgot, actually, when I started to think about how did this come about. And so I listed, I have it grouped in a couple things. Number one is, how did this thing start? What problems are we solving, and how have we tried to solve those? And so the problems I saw as someone who had retired from the DuPont company, so I'm a big multinational company, I realized over the years I almost never got connected to a local city. Like, I would never even know the mayor, and I didn't know what the local resources were, because when you're working in a big company, you're pretty isolated within your own world. And in fact, when I retired from DuPont, I ended up being hired by Freeport McMoran, which was at Phelps Dodge, a big mining company at the time, as head of sales and marketing. And during my work, I started to think, hey, it would be kind of cool to be out into the community. And they wouldn't let me. They said, well, there's a waiting list to be able to do that, like being on a board or something like that. Is like, wow, that's when I realized there's like this gap between these big ones. So I wasn't really thrilled by that. I thought that, if you're going to do business and global business, especially, we all should be together. There's like a pool of people, no matter what size company, entrepreneurs, startups, big companies, et cetera. But there's natural barriers to that. I also had an issue with the cross city, because there's 35 chambers of commerce in Phoenix. So it's like I'm doing international business, or even like I was in San Diego at the time I came up with the idea, the Carlsbad, California area. And I thought, well, I want to do business in both cities, San Diego and Phoenix, but what chamber do I join? It's like, it doesn't make any sense. And I was actually in Carlsbad. So it was like another chamber. It's like my head is exploding. So I want to join a chamber that's everywhere, and I want to not have to pay for every city. That doesn't make sense. And I want to talk to people who are actually in the city where I'm doing business, so I can find clients and get clients there. So those were problems that we wanted to solve. Also, I felt like chambers were not very proactive, that their idea of helping you was putting your logo up at lunch. And that just wasn't enough. I wanted something more tactical and practical. And I wanted passion to help, like, hey, I have this problem. Can you help? And have you help? I also kind of thought that there wasn't a lot of good vetting, that a lot of the people I was meeting in some of these chambers were, kind of random and not necessarily trustworthy. And that seemed to me a problem. I didn't really want to waste time either making bad mistakes or just kind of just waste time. And so really wanted to solve that. And then finally, chambers are a lot of white guys in the US. And, hey, I'm a white guy. I'm an old white guy. I get it. But why do there need to be so many, and why can't there be a celebration of diversity, both gender balance and variety of people, different cultures and religions and skin color? I want that no matter what city I'm in. So those are some of the problems. And I think probably all of you with Global Chamber recognize that we're solving those. We've solved a lot of those. And certainly I think those issues are typically not what you see at Global Chamber. It's not that chambers or other chambers are bad. In fact, we love other chambers. It's just that for people doing cross-metro and cross-border business, these types of characteristics, I think, are much more helpful for their success. So that let's talk about connecting and networking and meeting people. I'm not interested anymore in networking, meaning like going to a meeting, finding a needle in a haystack, starting from scratch. Most of the people in Global Chamber, I think, are the same way in the sense that it's not bad. Networking is fine, especially if you're in a community of people that are close to who would be able to help you or clients. But if you're looking for business in New York and you're sitting in Seattle, networking in Seattle is not going to be very helpful. You've got to do something different. So you've got to now get virtual and you've got to meet those people. The problem is those people that might be your clients may not be necessarily coming to meetings. And so we need a database. We need something larger. So these are issues I'm raising because these are problems we've tried to solve as well. Is let's build a huge database. If you want to meet, a medical person in Germany, the hospital administrator, they're not going to come to a networking event that most of us would come to unless it's a trade show. So we need to make a warm introduction. And so I'd like to make the segregation of the concept of networking versus strategic connecting, which includes warm introductions. It's asking our members, what do you need in a regional, what level, what title, what's their problem that they're having, and then through this big database being able to find warm introductions that strategically connect them. So it doesn't totally eliminate the need to network. It doesn't eliminate the need to go to trade shows. It's not the one answer that you would ever need in your entire business life. It is an answer to get to people that are difficult to get to anywhere in the world. And so that's what we've tried to do at Global Chamber, is be very strategic in connecting and have much less requirement around networking. Although we do things like League of Extraordinaries, where we do networking around people who are probably trying to find the same people around international business. And that goes to now segueing into referrals and what Dave is going to be talking about. What we recommend and what we talk about with referrals is be very clear on who you're looking for. Be very clear on the problem that they have, and be very clear on how you solve it. Those are the important things. Don't give us the history of what college you went to and all of the background of the story of how you got here. That's important, especially if we're going to get to the next level in terms of our business. But for us, we're pretty focused in on being effective. So those are what we're going to need. And that's why we emphasize those things in our meetings. So finally, and in conclusion, be part of the global tribe. One aspect of that is the trust that the vetting and all of this comes together, that our tribe is professional and honest and ethical, and not that you don't have to check people out. However, the checking out process is a lot less onerous, and the risk of having a big problem is much, much less within the global tribe. Be global and unstoppable, and be global. Global is good. The more people that are doing global business, the better the world's going to be, because more people will be listening to each other and negotiating and mediating. And that's a lot better than shouting at each other and throwing bombs at each other. And so I'd like to now turn it back to you, César, for what you go through when members join Global Chamber and how you instruct them and help them get to the next level very efficiently.
Excellent. Thank you very much. This is the perfect starting, Doug. So I appreciate it. So I'm going to be covering a little bit of a step on the onboarding process when members join, and a little bit of recommendations from myself, because I'm behind of many of those introductions that are happening day to day, and I've seen things how they go and how they don't go. So I'm going to be making some recommendations. So first of all, just to have clear that the membership at the Global Chamber is a 12-month process. So we like to be in touch with our members. We like to see them from time to time. So the regular onboarding typically starts with a onboarding call. So when the member joins, when you join, you need to plan. Make sure you plan an onboarding call with your executive director, or with me or Doug if you don't have a chapter, if you belong to a chapter. So the purpose of that call is to plan those 12 months and see how we can be helping you. And so again, that's a 12-month process. It's an ongoing thing. Sometimes a member join, he said, yeah, I have this, we made the intros, and then he disappears, and he or she, they don't get the real value at the end of the Global Chamber community. That process includes what Doug just mentioned, the warm introduction, the strategic connections. That's the top of the process, but it also includes so it also includes speaking opportunities. It includes events, our events, and being featured in social media, in our blog. So there's a lot of other second degree opportunities, I like to call them. So I would like to start then with the events. In particular, the virtual leagues that we're doing are networking events. Those are opportunities for you to introduce your business, introduce yourself, and connect with other Global Chamber members. They happen twice, 3 times per month. We don't recommend that you go there to every single one. Just try to, we always hit like the second Tuesday of the month and the last Friday of the month. So that's very clear, the standard. So just try to plan to be into, let's say, every 3 months in one of them. So that's an opportunity for you to connect with new faces, typically, and have a little more exposure for yourself and your business, as I said, and more importantly, to be on top of our head. So the way that works is that when you join those events, we're taking notes, we have reports of every event, and we will exchange ideas and bring those ideas into warm introductions for you. Also, there's a sense of community in our network, typically. So there's other members or other chapters directors that they will learn about you and say, well, you know what, I know someone for you. I'm going to make that connection for you. And that actually happened. Recently, I was talking to a member in Atlanta that he said, you know, I've been very successful through the Global Chamber, and he joined like 2 months ago only. And I asked him like, how, why? And he's like, you know, I attended to one of those meetings, and you have a translation company that attended that meeting, and they were not doing business together. But the guy from the translation company said, well, you know, you need contacts in Africa. I have those contacts for you. I'm gonna make those for you. And those contacts are working now with our member in Atlanta, without, you know, being any benefit to the one who made the referral. And I know Dave is going to cover that in details later on. So there's that sense of community, so that you can feel that in those type of events. And so going to those meetings also, you never know. Another case, I like to put some examples always. Another case is that I had a member in Dallas that reached out to me the other day and said, well, I need some help with my website. I'm trying to update my website. And you have someone in India that attended an event recently, And he does that. I was like, oh my God, I went to our previous event in the month or 2 months ago, and I couldn't find anything. So it wasn't that recently, it was last year, but I found it and I made a connection. But that said that, you always will have the members on top of your head, and that will always be helpful. And besides the leagues, there's always the meetups. We have the regional meetups that are happening particularly every week. And we have London, New York, Tel Aviv, Tokyo, Accra, and many more. And those are, if you had a particular regional interest, those are great. We actually started this week with events in French and Portuguese. I've been doing events in Spanish, and those are bringing a lot of value. For instance, the one we had with French speakers, we had two people from Paris that I think is the first time they join an event. They're not members, but they joined the event. At the first time I see them there, and they were the perfect connection for this member we have in the US that's traveling to Paris next week. So there's a lot of magic happening with this regional and with the language specific events, and we plan to keep them going. Then just briefly to cover about social media and exposure, I recommend as part of that onboarding to join our LinkedIn group, so you can be on top of everything that's happening. Make sure you're receiving our newsletters. They're going out every week, and we can actually help you have some exposure there if you have any particular opportunity. And we can also help you promote your events, and we can put them in your calendar and all of that. So now the most important things are warm introductions, and I wanted to cover that a little bit more, and how they work. So as I mentioned, based on those onboarding calls, we take notes. We have the conversation with you, with the member, and learn what their needs are. And after that, as a follow-up, we will come up with some warm introduction for you. Those are by email, and and we typically copy. We copy, if you're part of the chapter, we copy your executive director. So everyone is in the loop. And also, as I mentioned, through the events, especially the Leagues of Opportunities and the League of Extraordinaries, we have a process where we make the notes, and we also come back as a follow-up with more warm introductions. And do not hesitate to reach out to us throughout the year if you need anything in particular. If you have a business trip, or if you're doing a business with a partner, a new partner, and you want to get new insights, reach out to us. And also, if it's something urgent, make sure you specify it, and we will make sure to make those introductions. We have a lawyer in Israel that came back to me recently and say, I like the introductions, but I prefer them to be faster. I'm like, okay, well, if you need, if there's some sense of urgency needed, just make it clear, and we'll make sure to have the global tribe helping us with that. So then a couple of recommendations once the introductions happen, and this is just me seeing what's happening every time I connect members. So many times, and we try those to be of mutual benefit. So for both members to be a benefit, but sometimes they might be more benefit to one of the parties. And so when that happens, and if you're the one, if you're looking for a connection in France because you're going to Paris, you're probably the one who's benefiting most of that connection. So when that happens, try to always be the first to respond to that email. Do not wait for the other party to reply. And sometimes members come back to me saying, I didn't reply because the other person didn't reply, and so there's no interest. And say, well, that's a loop you don't want to be part of. You want to take a step ahead, and if it's you the one who's looking for something particular, you really need to be the first to reply. And in that reply, do not self-pitch that reply. Definitely, there's some cases where I made a connection and I'm like, oh my God, really? It's like, selling about your company, and so you're meeting the people. You need to foster that relationship a little bit. And so my recommendation is always to reply with something short, and try to find something in common with the company and with the person, and leave it open for a conversation. Say, I have some space next week at Thursday. Let's connect. Let's have a quick chat. Something like that that's inviting to take action. Something I've been seeing a lot lately is problems with Calendly. So be careful with these apps, Calendly or other solutions like I've seen some people reply and say, "Oh, that's great. Thank you, César. And nice to meet you, John. This is my link. Schedule a meeting." If you're the one that's really looking to benefit of this introduction, you want to do that. I've seen plenty of times where, when I follow up and say, "Hey, did you end up talking to John?" No, he didn't schedule a meeting. So if you really want to succeed in this introduction and have something for your business there, try for you to be the one who's scheduling the meeting instead of waiting for the others to do, because at the end I think we're all busy, and so we want to avoid that type of problem. The other thing, sometimes you will, as a member, you will be getting some introductions that might not be of a direct benefit. We always want to think, we always believe there's a benefit for everyone, but you are the other party who are connected. And so sometimes members go silent, they don't reply. We always recommend that you at least reply. And if it's, there's no match, there's no really interest at the moment, something polite, connect with that person on LinkedIn and wait for the future, because you never know. You can be selling insurance today, but you never know what you're doing in 5 years. And if you see, I mean, if you have time, you see a little bit of potential there, a quick 10-15 minute intro call, it doesn't do much of damage. And I mean, it doesn't have to be tomorrow. You can scale it further in the future. And so, yeah, that goes with, you never know who knows who at the end. And so make sure you connect, even if you're busy and there's nothing that's continuing in that introduction. Make sure you connect with that person on LinkedIn and make sure there's a sense of interest at the end to grow the network. And one example of that, it's Dana Austin. I think Dana is here on the call. Is she came down to Ponce, where I live, last week, and I'm all focused about her writing and book authors event, and just thinking about it. And she says, "Oh wow, in Ponce there's a big med school, and there's a lot of research on medicine and science." And I'm like, "Yeah, well, a sister of a friend works there, so let me try it." And so I made it up happening, and we met the director of research of the school. So that's, you never know. And then just to wrap up, because I went to leave Dave to take it over. I just want to make sure that, at the middle of the year, we want to schedule a follow-up with you. We want to, have a catch up and see how things are going, and always reach out back to us. And if you're too busy, make sure you assign someone from your team, and let's get your team busy as you, and get them part of the Global Chamber. And finally, I stole some words from our director in Israel, Tal Silverberg. He's always saying networking is more about farming than it is about hunting. I don't know if that's coming from him, or that's probably coming from someone else, but I heard it from him. So that's a phrase I really like, because what I'm seeing, I'm living every day. And something that I like is that, when you're building a business, they're always telling you about location. And something I really like is to substitute that by connection. So that's all I have. And I want to leave it to Dave Plunkett from Collaboration Junkie, a member in the Global Chamber London. Dave is all about partnerships, and he did a presentation like 2 or 3 months ago in our London meetup, and that's what triggered this event. So thank you, everyone, and Dave, I think it's all to you now.
Awesome. Thank you, César, and thank you, Doug, for your intro as well. So yeah, hi, I'm Dave from Collaboration Junkie, as I said, and I've been a member of Global Chamber since the summer. And I just want to build really on what César said about how active and giving and referral focused this community is. But I often quote membership to like a gym. I ran my own membership organization back in the day and grew that to a couple of thousand members almost entirely through referrals and strategic partners. But it's all very well having a gym membership. If you don't use it, you're not going to get benefit. And so it's really important to do all those things that César mentioned. But then again, on top of that, it's all very well using the machines, but if you really want to get the most, you need to know how to use them in the right way. So as much as I want to absolutely back up everything César said about how to deal with people when they pass referrals, what I want to focus on today is a few tips around how you can make it really easy for people to refer you, whether that be the executive directors within the Global Chamber, or whether it's your fellow members. And so I'm just going to give a few tips that hopefully help you make the most of this. So first one on referrals. And there's a theme here that's going to run throughout, which is for us all to remember that we're dealing with people with different cultures. And what we may think is normal may not be for other people as well. So we always need to remember that. But the first one can be, and what I found is this goes across all cultures though, is some people just get a little bit nervous about asking for referrals. Here in the UK, I say it's something called the ick, but it's that awkward feeling that some people get when you feel that maybe you're putting a burden on someone else by asking for a referral. I'm going to cover this one very quickly, and I do this by saying, think about how you feel when you make an introduction or a referral and it goes well. It feels great, right? It feels brilliant. And that's because you've done a good thing. People like to do good things. So the first thing I want to say is remember that people love to give referrals. So don't feel awkward about asking. The trick is to make it really, really easy for people to do that. And that's what I want to spend the next 10 minutes kind of covering, is about how you can make it really easy for people to refer you. So the first thing about making it easy is something that Doug mentioned, and that's about being specific. It can be all too easy for us to feel that there's a danger of us on missing out when we're too targeted in what we ask for in a referral. But the trouble is with well-networked people and people with a lot of connections is that when you're too broad in your offering around what you're looking for, people find it hard to think of someone to refer you to because there's just too many people that come to mind. If you say, oh, I'm looking for introductions to corporates or to small business owners, there are so many people that the likes of César and Doug and other people in your network will have of a similar nature that people just won't be able to picture someone. So the first thing is to really be specific about your request. And there's I'm going to touch on 3 ways that you can do this. The first one is who. So it's about being really specific about a type of business or individual that you're looking for. Is it based on geographical location? Is it based on a particular sector or demographic? Is it based on the size of business, be that turnover of number of staff? By being really, really specific about these types of things, it makes it much easier for someone to mentally flick through their mental Rolodex of clients and contacts and go, yes, I know the person that I can introduce you to that's just like that. So that's the first one, is you can be really specific about the type of introduction you're looking for. The second way about being specific is, when are you looking for an introduction? And what I mean by this is there a specific point in time that your clients or your ideal contacts, that's when you want an introduction? Be that in their personal life or their business life. Is there a specific time in someone's business journey that is perfect for an introduction? So it could be when they're taking on staff. It could be when they're moving to a new location, be that internationally or within their own region. It could be when they're moving offices. It could be at a certain point in the financial year. The second way of being specific is by being really precise on, if you come across businesses who are at this stage in their journey, that's the perfect time for me to have a referral. So that's the second piece. The third piece around how to be specific is to flip this on its head and to actually say to people Think about the problem that you solve as a business owner. Think about the problem that you solve. Then think about the pains that your clients are going through when they're facing that problem that you solve. When they're going through those, what are the things that they're saying? What are the things that how are they acting? And you can ask people to look out and listen out for people that are saying that. So for example, what you would say to me or César or Doug or whoever is, if you hear a business owner or an individual saying this, that's when I want a referral to me. That's the trigger that shows that they're going through a problem that I need, that I can solve, that I can help with. And so there's 3 ways of being specific. It's being really specific about what the business is and what it does, or its size. It's about being really specific about a specific point in time that business or individual is going through. Or it's about thinking about a problem that they may be having at any given point and what they may be saying or doing or a way that they might be acting that makes it really easy for someone to hook onto and go, right, yeah, I know when to refer someone. That last one there is a really good long-term strategy because people remember hooks and stories. So being specific about a point in time or a specific business is great for an immediate referral, for people to go, all right, yeah, I'll introduce you right now. Giving people that hook of, if you hear someone say this, it's a great time to refer me. It's a really good long-term strategy to have because that will stay in someone's mind. So that's a good place to start. The other important thing to do, I feel, is give some context. And this is going to be the first of 3 things I'm going to talk about giving. Is remembering to give context. And this is a cultural thing again. Depending on some regions in the world, if you look for a referral, then they may be more than happy to give it. We're part of the same network. I'm open with my network, therefore I'm more than happy to give a referral. In other parts of the world, or just different personality types, people may be a little bit more guarded and they want a little bit more of a reason as to, even within a tight-knit community like the Global Chamber, they may want a bit more of a reason and a bit more context as to why that referral is being made. So once you've been specific about who you're looking for, it never hurts to give just 1 or 2 sentences around why you're looking for that introduction. What is it that you're going to do? How are you going to add value to them? And what's that next step? Is it an introductory call? Is it an informal chat? But being really clear about the context as to why you're looking for that referral, how you're going to add value, will often make people just feel that bit more secure in handing over an introduction. What we need to remember is that every time someone makes an introduction, they're putting their own reputation on the line. So you need to treat that with some respect. The other thing around giving would be around giving thanks. I think César has already mentioned this, but it's really important that when you get a referral, that you make sure that you say thank you to the person that referred them. And not only that, but keep them informed of what's going on. People that are actively connecting and actively referring, one thing that I can promise you they don't like is when they don't know what's going on with that referral, when people don't follow up. So I'm going to absolutely reinforce what César said and say, respond quickly, respond professionally, but then outside of that initial response, keep whoever's referred you up to date with what's going on, let them know how it went. All too often, people only do this when it actually turns into business. But even if it doesn't turn into business, it's still really important to let the other person know that. Let them know the reason why. Maybe it's a really good opportunity to educate them on what could be an even better referral next time round. So make sure that you're giving thanks and showing appreciation for a referral that's been passed, and then keeping the referrer in the loop. The other thing I want to touch on the giving side is about how to be really referable, is to give referrals as well. There's a saying about givers gain, and if you want to gain referrals, then give openly. And it doesn't always have to be referrals to business introductions. If you're someone who freely and openly gives introductions, whether that's to direct referrals or it's partners, maybe it's to other networks, maybe it's to events, maybe it's a business book, whatever it may be, if there's something that you can give and give openly and share, maybe it's even giving your own knowledge or expertise. If you're someone who openly gives, then you'll be seen as a connector of people and a giver and a giver, and the law of reciprocity works wonders, and you'll find that naturally you'll start receiving more referrals, even if it's not from the same people that you gave introductions to. When you give openly, then you become seen and known as someone who breeds and helps that culture of referrals, and you'll receive those back in. So I'm going to just run through those, just give a quick recap on those points again. People love to give referrals, so just remember that. If you're someone who feels awkward about giving referrals, just remember how good it feels when you make one, and people feel that same way, then they make them for you. The trick is to make it very easy for someone to do that. And you can do that by being very specific about the type of business you're looking for an introduction to. You can be very specific about, if it's not about a type of business, it's when in a business's journey that you would like the introduction. Or it's about when a business says a certain thing, or a person says a certain thing or does a certain thing, that's the trigger to refer you. It's about giving context as to why you're looking for the referral, so that people feel safe and secure in a trusted environment about making that introduction for you. It's about giving thanks and keeping the communication channels open. And it's about giving referrals and giving openly and freely and being seen to be doing that. And if you can touch on all those things, and at all times remember to be respectful and empathetic of different people's cultures and speed that they may want to go at, then you'll find that you'll get a huge amount, not only from the wonderful and giving community in the Global Chamber, but your own business networks as a whole. So that's it from me now. I think it's back over to you, Doug or César. I'm more than happy to take any questions.
Awesome. That was great. What do you think, César?
No, that's great. Again, I think part of my day-to-day in the Global Chamber is to make those warm introductions. And I'm always thinking that feeling of happiness when the magic happens is because that's part of my job, but it's not necessarily. I mean, sometimes it does happen because that's how you feel when you help someone. So that's great, Dave. Great tips.
Cool, thank you.
Doug, do you have any?
Yeah, why don't we get comments from the floor? Hey, Dana.
Hey, Doug. Hey, César and Plunkett. I really enjoyed that. And it's almost as if you were sitting at our Global Chamber Atlanta Advisory Board holiday luncheon yesterday, because we were talking precisely about this, always looking for ways to add values to members and remembering that our advisory board members are also members, and to see how we can also highlight what they offer along with Globinars or meetups. So what we got out of our meeting yesterday, the one thing was to give our advisory board members opportunities to take the lead in presenting at meetups or Globinars and adding values to the members. So you're going to see more of that in 2023. And this is really good. I like the way you itemized everything, Dave, and made it real clear. The who, the why, the what, and the when. Thank you.
My pleasure, Dana. And if you'd like me to come across and do something for your chapter, then I'd be more than welcome to. So yeah.
July. We'll put you down for July. Cool. You got it. Thank you.
As a follow-up to what Dana asked, because I was making notes, I'm going to guess almost everybody made notes. And I love the way you went through them almost 3 times, I think. And so it made it very clear. And now it's like imprinted in my brain. Do you have it on a blog post or somewhere? Where can we find it on your website so we can refer there?
Yeah, I'll get something sent over that can go on the Global Chamber site and put it in a nice PDF so that it can be sent to
Oh,
new members in future as well. So I'll get that done.
well, I was thinking about directing a link to your site, that covers this, or do you talk about this on somewhere on the web?
I do, yeah, on LinkedIn and on my site. So yeah, I'll get a link sent over. Yeah, no problem.
Okay.
Thank you, Doug. Yeah.
That would be awesome. Yeah, no, we can do something too, but we don't want to copy you, and we'd rather like make sure people get to know you because you're awesome. And kind of related to that, how do you make money? What is your business? How does it work for you? And so that we know who to refer to you.
Yeah, so for me, I work with businesses that are looking to leverage referrals and word of mouth more to help them implement these types of strategies. So both in terms of referrals from their customers and their networks, but more frequently with strategic referral partners. So working with those businesses that have got a vested interest in referring your ideal clients on a consistent basis. So I have a framework of my own called Dance, and I help people, with the skills, knowledge, and the strategy to actually implement this in their own businesses, because it's the oldest and most successful form of marketing, and yet it's probably the one that people are least likely to actually have a strategy around. They'll have strategies around pay-per-click and email and social marketing, but they still get most of their business through word of mouth. So I'm here to actually put that strategy in place for them. So
nearly everybody. Yeah. So who are you looking for? What stage are they in? And then what are they saying that would trigger a referral for you?
Yeah, so for me, thank you, Doug. That's a very gracious question to ask. So yeah, it's I typically work with B2B service providers or SaaS, so services and software, and they're looking for next stage of growth. So they're established businesses, and they're looking for their next stage of growth. They're talking about word of mouth. They're talking about partners. It's very rare that I work with a business that doesn't already know that partnerships are their way to increase their sales. What I do is I come in and I accelerate that growth for them, and I give them the been there, done that, learn lesson. So it's, if you ever hear someone talking about developing a partnership strategy, that's the time to refer me in. So yeah.
Awesome. What other questions and comments do people have? Just unmute yourself and go ahead. And while we're waiting for that, one of the questions that occurred to me is there an app that you can use to track, and particularly the feedback loop, right? Like you make an introduction and it kind of disappears. We have our own systems where we try to do a good job of tracking. I'm not sure we do it perfectly yet. Is there a way that businesses can do that as well?
I'd say whatever works best for them, Doug. So you can get, at one extreme, you can have systems of automated links that track everything, and it's all kind of wonderful over there. But it is vitally important to track so you can have that communication. But one thing I always say is it's better to have a spreadsheet that you use than a fancy system that you don't. So there isn't any one system that I would recommend. Just to have a system, just to know where your introductions came from, where they are in your buying cycle, your customer journey, so that you're able to give that feedback back to whoever made the referrals. I don't think there's any one particular one. There's loads out there. Just whichever one you're going to use, from a bit of paper to a fancy system, just make sure that you do it and you do it consistently, I think would be my message.
Good thoughts. Other questions, please.
One thing that I would recommend, Doug, is HubSpot. I've been using that quite effectively to manage my customer relationship and follow up. HubSpot is very good and has been very effective to me.
Okay, great.
Yeah. And linked into that. Linked into that HubSpot piece, because obviously people will often use that as a sales pipeline, right? If someone says they're going to make a referral for you, then I would treat that like a sales lead. So in the same way that if someone was interested in having a conversation with you and then they didn't get back in touch, you would follow up with that person, with that sales lead. If someone's said they're going to make a referral for you and they don't, put a note in whatever system it is you're going to use, be it HubSpot, be it any of the others that are out there. Put a note in there. as a reminder to say, just to drop a friendly reminder, because if someone said they're going to make a referral and they haven't, normally it's just because they've forgotten. And actually they'll be quite grateful that you've reminded them to do it. So kind of just built in with that whole systems and tracking. It's not just about tracking referrals in, it's about tracking people who said that they're going to make a referral, and just giving them a nudge if they've forgotten or they've
How do you actually make the connection?
Oh, good question. So there are no bad referrals, but by far the worst type of referral is when someone says, "Oh, I mentioned you to this person the other day, they'll get in touch." Because 9 out of 10 times that person isn't getting in touch. You want to be in control of the introduction. So for me, the ideal introduction is where, and it's what all of you at Global Chamber do exceptionally well, is a joint introduction with some context. So ideally, the person making the referral has spoken to both people, or at least at least one, and there's a warm introduction with some context as to why the introduction's been made. And it's great if there's maybe each person's LinkedIn profile or their website or whatever it may be. But yeah, it doesn't need to be a great big long email, but just a joint introductory email with some context behind it is for me the best way. Yeah.
What other questions, comments? Okay. On that note, would probably not an ideal introduction, as I got one. Hopefully he's not on the call today. It's from a member of Global Chamber. It says, "Doug, potential Olympic winner here. Please do reach out." And then it's copied to 2 people, and the other person has something at hotmail.com. I have no idea what this is about or what the context is. And so I just replied, "Thanks, the person, looking forward to learning more."
Yeah, and it's that making it easy. It's that making it easy piece I mentioned, right? Like we're all busy people, which means we want, if we're looking to do things over and above what we normally do, we want it to be easy. And so to do the if you're going to make referrals, make them smooth, and if you're going to request referrals, make it easy for the person to do that.
Well, it goes to we have a limited amount of time. We want to make all these, and so I thank him, for at least making an introduction. It's not a perfect introduction. The process wasn't, but at least it happened. So I'm not sure what's worse. I'd rather get the introduction and have it poorly articulated versus never get it. Probably. So, because he's probably got something in his head. Any other questions or comments, please? Looks like we have about 5 minutes left. Nobody has questions or comments, really? Is this a topic that's frightening to people or mostly okay? Do anybody have got tips like Jacques has around what systems to use, or things that work for you or things that don't work?
I'm gonna add or ask Dave. You mentioned one of your points. How it depends on cultures, and based on your experience, what recommendations you can give us, depending on what you have lived before. Even in the UK or Europe or with other clients you have around the world. Because in my experience, for instance, in the US and North America, it's like a very common, very practical to make these type of introductions. But when it comes to Latin America, I think they're not as used to, or they're just, they go silent and they prefer to ignore because they prefer not to engage. So what's your experience on that when it comes to Europe and other regions?
Asia is the same way. Yeah.
It really varies. I remember going on there was the first Tel Aviv, the first Global Chamber Israel event I went to, just so happened to be talking about referrals in different cultures. And I remember Tal being very open in Israel, like they make them open and they make them freely and they do it very quickly. I think what I've found in Europe and particularly the UK is there is no one hard and fast rule. Some people are, it's much more down to the individual around how open and giving they are, and how and also the level of context that they want. There isn't a straight answer on this one, I'm afraid. So, and I think in this instance, if you're not sure, then ask. And I think this is the cultural thing about having empathy, is if you're not sure, then don't presume that someone's on the same wavelength you are, and check with them. And if they're not comfortable, maybe it's just that they're not comfortable right now. So ask them what they would need, in order to feel comfortable. And maybe it's that they just need to get to know you a little bit more. Maybe it's that actually there's just a little bit more context. So I think the key is there isn't one rule. So it's about understanding the person you're talking to, and where they're comfortable. Yeah, that would be my take.
The other thing that I would add is also, we have to be extremely careful about, specifically with the referees, when you make referral introductions, not to expect it's a deal, because it's a relationship, and doing business take time, and you have to nurture that relationship. It's something that can happen. For example, I'm going to give you an example of myself. I was introduced to someone that was 2 years ago. And just last week, I closed a deal with that person for, X amount. We're talking about $500,000, right? And those are, relationship is just a continued evolving engagement. That person might need something and that person might not need something. But at the same time, if you think that person fall into your circle or potentially acquiring something from you, continue nourishing that. You never know. It's time consuming.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Excellent. Thank you.
Really good thoughts. The feedback loop you talked about, Dave. Oh, go ahead, César. I've got some noise on my end.
Thanks. Yeah, that's perfect. That's perfect. That's the scenario that I see every time. And now that I've been with the Global Chamber for more, I think it's gonna be 7 years now. It's like, I've seen people fostering those relationships, and definitely not happening in the first or even the second year. So that's really a great point. I think the idea of and something I wanted to add is, like, there's some members that they are very frankly with us and say, I don't want the introduction. I don't want anything unless I ask for it. And so that's very fine. And so since this Globinar is also, is addressed for the members, that's fine. And that's, make sure that you transmit that information to us, and we make sure that we won't be making unnecessary introduction for you. So that's very clear. And another thing, as we are wrapping up, the whole idea of the webinar was thinking on 2023, and with the recommendation for all of you business owners to make some time in your schedule to connect with people. And this is beyond Global Chamber. That's something I'm going to try to apply myself outside of the Global Chamber, like trying to expand. Like in my case here in Puerto Rico, for instance, I take every opportunity, like Dana Austin again that came last week, or all the people from Mattrade that are members of the Global Chamber. I take every opportunity to expand the network. And even though they're with people that probably are not a fit for the Global Chamber, but at the end, you never know. So make sure that next year you set some time and leave some space in the calendar to foster relationship and make new connections.
Yes, absolutely.
LinkedIn is a great place to do that as well. In your community, in LinkedIn. César, when you were going through your list, which I thought was outstanding, I gave eight examples as a member where we end up doing what you talked about, where we listen to what's being said and we make warm introductions, or our brain is engaged. Number one is at the well, actually 9, because before onboarding, when we're talking to a prospective member, we're already thinking about who to connect with. Number 2 is the onboarding process, where we usually have a conversation. Number 3 is the reaction we get, like, this is good, this is bad, this, so we now think of a third way. In meetings that we have and events, we are, when someone says something, it's like, oh, well, they need to meet this person. When there's a let's see, I don't even understand my writing. I think I'm going to skip some of them. Random things. So like Dana says, hey, I need this or that. And I go, oh, you need to meet this person. So that's somewhat random, but it's kind of part of the whole process. And then, random, and also random meaning during the year, we try to, at least every member try to, like, we haven't heard about this person before, or for a while, I wonder what's happening. So we'll actually, reach out, like, what's going on? What do you need right now? And then, as we get toward the end of the year, it's like, well, what do we need to do for the next year? And so what's going on, what's changed, what's evolved, et cetera. So I think I skipped a couple of them, but those are main things. And it goes to what César talked about, is being engaged. We do get members that sign up and they disappear for a year, and they disappear like forever sometimes. Like, maybe we never hear from them. That's pretty rare, but at least, for some engagement during the year, it's really important, just for anything, not just us, but anything, right? To be able to get some value out of it. Dana, I think you've got your hand raised. Or Dana, are you there?
Yes, I'm there. Thank you for that as well, Doug. I was just kind of piggybacking on what César was saying, and the connections that we made, and the introductions that were made while we were there. So yes, we went to his lovely region of Ponce, which I'm going to tout that should be a place we all visit. It's absolutely beautiful and breathtaking. And the connections that were made, sorry, I'm near the Air Force Base and there's a plane going over. The connections the introductions he made with the doctor there in Ponce and clinical research was twofold. And then I want to go back to the Transformational Writers Conference, and the connections that he made there with the publisher and authors there were just astounding. And I know that our relationship is going to be larger than even the Transformational Writers Conference, because what the writers there in Puerto Rico and the publishers, they want to expand their world. So I can envision them being a part of Global Chamber, but it's really the relationship we're looking to build first. Yeah. And inviting them, because the value, we can see the value that would be there for them, and connecting them and bringing them on board, particularly since we have a Latin American component, and Spanish speaking, French speaking, and now Portuguese for Global Chamber. So we are global and unstoppable. And what we say for Atlanta is, here we grow.
And Dana, you raised it, if you don't mind, César and Dave, just one more quick question, and then turn it over to César. And that is, there are people like César, and I'm something like this, and there are many people probably in your life, dozens probably, that are good connectors. And not everybody is a connector, right? There's another aspect of personality that some people kind of either don't care, they don't have empathy, they're focusing on other stuff, they're in a different life. Like, there's a whole series of things, but the really, really good connectors might be 1 in 100, 1 in something. It's like that kind of ratio. Dave, I'm curious, when you meet those people, like for your business and when you've evolved, do you do something special for them? Do you have like ask them extra questions, find out where they live, and send them wine? I mean, how do you manage those types of relationships? Because those are the super connectors, can be amazing.
Show appreciation. So it's show appreciation, because they're the people that refer that they're people that do it for the love of it. Typically they connect because it's just what they do. They find it easy, so they join the dots. Whenever I have a one-to-one with someone, I'm personally gutted if there isn't at least 2 referrals I'm going to make, introductions I'm going to make off the back of that meeting, because it's what I do. I like to connect people within my network. I think if we can, and by doing that, I hope to think that rubs off on other people. But I think connectors, typically, they're people that know lots of people. They're typically extroverts. They're typically people who who they like to spread joy, and so when people appreciate that joy has been spread, they get a kick out of that as well. So I would say, yeah, I would say, yeah, just show gratitude, not over the top, but I think they're typically people who they like to know what's gone on with the introductions that they've made, both from that enjoyment perspective of knowing that it's gone well, and also knowing whether or not that person has dealt with that introduction in the right way, because their reputation is at stake, and it's a reputation that is a key part of what they do. But then, yes, if there's something personal that you can do that shows that you've thought about them, then they're gonna appreciate that more. So, yeah, and remember that there's probably big demands on their time. So if you're going to ask them to do something, it's even more important to make it easy and make it specific, because they're probably getting a lot of requests.
The feedback loop you talked about then becomes really important for those people. All right, is like, oh, by the way, this worked, that didn't work, but that this work gives them that adrenaline rush that might inspire them for some more additional thoughts.
Yeah, I'd say so. I think, yeah.
Awesome. César, is that how you see it as well? Because you're a super connector as well.
Yes, not really. That's how I see it. And something I want to add, because I know we went over as a last point when you mentioned random. There's a lot we're seeing in randomness when it comes to, for instance, the book authors. For instance, that's a group that a book author put together, and we say, yeah, sure, why not? But then we have over 50 or 65 people who are book authors, and even though one is doing marketing and the other one is doing, I don't know, translation, finance, they find a common point, a common things to discuss and to network. And another example is that we have our executive director or global advisor in Melbourne, Australia. She's a golfer. And she came to me recently and asked, like, connect me with everyone who's a golfer. And like, how do I know that? But I use LinkedIn, and that's a recommendation I make to everyone. It's like, put as much as you can in LinkedIn, even though your hobbies, even though what you've been part of, what you did in high school, because you never know. I found a couple of members who are golfers or who were part of an association. The easy one is Joe Bogerstedt there in Arizona, because he has a foundation on that. But there were others that I didn't know. So it's always good to have all your information, all your hobbies, everything, because that's a way to network at the end as well.
Yeah, we end up when César and I are going back and forth, like, what about this kind of person? What about that? We'll use LinkedIn as one of the resources and search that way. And so, yeah, kind of in reverse, if you're looking for people to find you, definitely make sure those words are in your profile. César, any final comments? You want to wrap it up?
I want to thank Dave for his awesome presentation. I invite everyone to connect with Dave on LinkedIn. He's very active and he's sharing a lot of information, and he's a family man. I liked his at the bottom of his signature, he said that he might reply at off business hours because he's trying to accommodate time with his family. That's awesome, Dave. We look forward to learning more from you. And at the same time, I invite, we have one more event this week. It's been a very busy week. We have the League of Nonprofits, and nonprofits is another one that connects people, because you never know. There's a lot of business people that has run their own nonprofits or are part of nonprofits, and that is an interesting call that we have in quarterly, and so we invite you to join us tomorrow.
Thank Dave. You're amazing. Thanks, César. Have a great day, everybody.
Take care.
Cheers, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, bye.